Hi everyone, it's Mike here. Thanks for joining me, and today I'm working in my small dilutions journal. And I'm going to jump straight in with the medium yellow from Reeves and the titanium white, and I'm going to mix them both together to create a kind of buttery creamy colour, which I'm going to cover my entire double page spread with. The page is completely covered. I've decided that the page is a little bit too yellowy for me, so I'm just going to mix a little bit of white acrylic paint, the titanium white, and I'm just going to mix that in on my palette and then just go over the page just to tone it down ever so slightly. Now that the pages are dry, I'm going to add some more of the titanium white onto my palette and some of the indigo blue hot cocoa, and I'm going to mix them both together on my palette. And when I'm happy with the tint of the brown, I'm going to grab a craft sponge and I'm going to grab a stencil from my stash, and I'm going to put some of that lovely paint through a stencil onto the pages. And the stencil I'm going to use is the Flourish stencil from Tim Holtz for Stampers Anonymous. And I'm going to apply the paint with the sponge through the stencil around the outside of the pages. Now I'm happy with the amount of chocolate brown that I've put down. I'm now going to mix some more of that titanium white into it to almost make it just a slightly off white colour with a hint of brown to it, so almost a pale biscuit colour if you like. I'm also going to add that through the stencil too. Because my focal image that I'm going to be putting onto the page in a moment has a hint of green in it, I'm also going to add some of this sage green acrylic paint through the stencil too. I'm not going to add too much, but just in certain areas. So happy with that result. It's just time for a quick blow dry with the heat tool and then we're off again. So out comes the Artist Stencil from TCW. This is my go-to stencil for script, and I'm using the archival ink in violet. I'm just going to apply some of that violet colour through the stencil, just randomly around the page. I'm not a huge fan of purple, but this violet colour is quite light, and as my focal image has some purple in it too, then it's a nice complementary colour to go with it. So time for a quick tidy up and a clean up, and it's out with the Mod Podge. So you can see one of my focal images there. I have 3 of them and they're exactly the same. Now this is taken from a very old floral calendar that I picked up in a shopping mall in the US quite some time ago. I think it was around about 2003. And I love the images on the calendar, so I kept it. And every now and again I will scan and print them and then cut them out to use in various different projects, but only for my own personal use. So here I am just sticking down the first layer of my collage. There are another 2 to go over the top of that to hide that floating bottom. And as you can see, I'm going to stick down those other 2 pieces over the top so that those edges will be hidden. So I'm going to just stick them all down using the Mod Podge, and I have printed these onto a very lightweight cardstock. They're not paper, which is why they're not curling up when I'm putting the Mod Podge on. And now just going to add the final collage layer, which will hide all those horrible edges, and that gives me a nice little grouping and a nice focal point on the left hand side of my page. And we're ready for a quick blast just to make sure it's all nice and dry and sealed before we move on. Time to dirty up the page, so I'm using the archival ink in Tree Branch, which is a nice light brown colour, and again bringing out the Artist Stencil, I'm just going to apply some of that ink through the stencil around the page just to colour in or cover in some of those spots which I think were needing a little bit more detail. And then I'm also going to use the same ink to go around the edges of the pages to create a toned in border. So I'm just taking a step back now and looking at it from a distance, and I've decided that the border's not dark enough. So out comes my Pitt pens, and this is the Caput Mortem, and I'm going to apply some of this around the border of the page just to darken it up a little bit because I wasn't really feeling it. So I'm also going to bring out one of the purple ones just to add in some of those tones to it as well. So I've got a mixture of brown and purple going in around the edge of my page borders. Now that's done, take another step back. Happy with that, time to add the quote. I'm going to stamp my quote, and I'm taking it from this Floral Fantasy stamp set from Indigo Blue, which is I believe a new release for this year, and I'm using the jet black archivaling. And I've already added the stamp to my acrylic block, and I'm just going to stamp that down into the space in the middle of the page where I've left a gap. Now because the page crease in the middle was interfering with the block, I've turned the stamp around on the stamp block so it now fits perfectly without catching. This is exactly where disaster struck. As you can see, I've got some ink that caught on the stamp and has transferred from that onto the page. Now, the ink isn't yet dry and it's archival ink, so it's not yet dry, so there is a way to remove it without damaging your page. And this is how you can do it. With a baby wipe. If you're very careful and the baby wipe isn't too wet, you can just rub gently on your page and the ink will come off. Now, I haven't added any matte medium or anything onto this page, onto this side of the page. So even if you don't, you can still remove the ink provided that you've actually stamped over onto acrylic paint. I haven't tested to see if this works on watercolours, but I know it does work on acrylic, which is why I was able to remove the excess ink without damaging anything. And that's it, my page is complete. All that I'll do now is just to date it and sign it, and I'll call that a day. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this art journal page. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, share the video, and if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel already, you can do so by clicking the button at the end of the video. That's all from me for now. I'll see you all again real soon. Bye for now.